Welcome. It's another beautiful day and I've got my coffee. So let's watch some stuff.
As you may know, the Appalachian Mountains are filled with dense, unexplored wilderness, and many people who live in these remote areas state that they have had strange encounters on the land. This being said, take a look at this recent trail cam footage here. The first shot shows two abnormally skinny humanoid creatures slowly crawling around on the ground. The one in the front has something human-like hanging from its mouth. The second shot shows them briskly walking past, noticing the trail cam. Now this footage is just deeply unsettling. The way these creatures just move around is enough to give you nightmares. But commenters believe that these things here were skinwalkers, the demonic witch spirits that shapeshift and disguise themselves within the skin of humans and animals. But others think it could be some other kind of cryptid creature like the rake. Or maybe even something else. And because this was supposedly taken in the Appalachian Mountains, which as I said, have reports of creature sightings often, people believe it even more.
That looked like a photo shoot to me. Well, there were two people, going back and forth in front of a camera to give you stuff to be afraid of, stuff to scare you. Say, hey, this is in the Appalachian Mountains. Like they did the weird walking thing and then they walked by the other way because it looked like the second one was holding whatever the first one in the first video was holding in their mouth area. It looked like some people just screwing around, making up some videos to scare you. Excuse me while I poke in here a second, and thank you so much for stopping by today. I appreciate you hanging out. If you're having a good time, I'd hope you'd consider hitting that subscribe button and come back tomorrow because I'm making a new video every day.
All right, check this out. So this voltmeter has one probe into the earth and one probe in my hand. And as I go through these different settings, you'll see a change happen. So what do you think that could be? A transfer of energy? Have you ever heard of a grounding effect or an earthing effect, where you put your feet, bare feet, onto the earth, hug a tree, just kind of being in nature and connecting to the earth with your body. So if I were to take my fingers and put it onto this probe, you can see there's an energy transfer happen, right? There's energy coming from the earth into my body. Those are electrons, right? Those are free radical scavengers. Those are antioxidants like effect. It's a pretty amazing process, but you can see there's something happening negative. Our water that we share about shows a negative charge, right? So as I go through these different settings, you can see again, but in this case, a more numerical value. Right? It's pretty amazing. We're electrical beings and we need to connect more with the earth. So I encourage you to get out in nature, hug a tree, hold on to a tree, put your hand on a tree, put your feet on the earth, take your shoes off, start a garden, compost, all that good stuff. Connect more with nature. So much love. Have a great day.
So this one goes along with the video that I showed yesterday about the grounding, or they called it earthing, which I thought was an interesting name because I'd never heard that before. But I remember as a kid, I used to walk around barefoot a lot. And now as an adult, you find that you don't do that as much. I mean, well, I find that I don't do that as much. And I find that a lot of the adults that I know don't do that as much either. And I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to start spending some time barefoot in the grass. That sounds normal, which is weird because we've been taught to normalize shoes. And yeah, I like the sound of it.
Have you heard about the first real human clone? A company called Clonate has claimed that they have successfully cloned the very first human baby. This was back in 2002 sometime, and initially the company said they would show proof of the baby to the world.
And they decided not to show up yet. But that never happened, and there are a few speculations as to why. Some people claim that they kept the identity a secret in order to allow the baby to live a normal life instead of a lab rat, while other people just claim it was a total hoax. And so far, it has not been proven to be real or fake. But here's what we do know.
CloneAid was a US-based company founded in 1997 with a mission statement to create genetically identical children for homosexual or infertile couples. And on December 27th of 2002, the company publicly announced they had successfully created a cloned female baby named Eve. Shortly after this announcement, different governments launched investigations into the company due to the illegal nature of cloning, and the story quickly faded out of the public eye. But if they did pull it off, we all know how the government handles business when they really want something someone else has. So is it possible the government took the baby for research and kept it at some secret facility somewhere like aliens at Area 51? And if so, do you honestly think they would tell the public? Just look how long it took them to admit UFOs are real.
So is it possible that we have already been interacting with real human clones? And how would anyone even know? What do you guys think? Real or fake?
I don't necessarily think that that's true. I don't think it's true. I don't think they actually did clone a child or a person. I think what they did was they made a test tube baby, which is just, taking a sperm and an egg and putting them together and growing it in a fake womb, like an incubator, if you will. I don't necessarily think that they actually did a cloning, because when I think of cloning, I think of just like that fella. He was there and then he was right next to himself, just like that movie Multiplicity. That's what I think of when I think of cloning. But that's very Hollywood influenced. So I could be completely wrong. What do you think? Do you think that that was real, or do you think that that was fake?
Imagine that from the beginning, ancient civilizations like the Egyptians or the Mayans were so technologically advanced that they managed to leave planet Earth and went somewhere else in space. This could possibly explain why in certain photos we can see pyramid-like structures, probably because they built them there. It could also explain why on certain photos of Mars, we spot doors, temple-like formations, and even statue-like structures. Maybe they constructed those as well. And then there's the mystery of the famous face on Mars, a head-like formation in the sand for several decades. Perhaps we are the descendants of the humans who chose to stay on Earth and didn't want to leave. This wild idea might also shed light on the strange radio signals we've received from outer space. These signals have baffled us for ages. We never quite understood their source or what emitted them. Could it be these people, these humans who ventured into space, attempting to communicate with us? However, the issue is, we're no longer up to speed with all this space travel, and such as civilizations have changed repeatedly. So, why would they send us a signal? What would they be trying to communicate to us?
This is the opposite theory of the one that I played yesterday. How we were on Mars first, and then they came here to Earth and colonized Earth, and then that whole Mars went to, right? So this is our previous civilizations that had advanced technology had left and gone to Mars. And then Earth probably did what? It did its whole reset thing. And then we have other us out there. It's still cool. It's a very cool theory. Just two different perspectives.
Okay, so I actually really need to talk to you about my theory about the uncanny valley. The uncanny valley is this point in a human's emotional response to something that is humanoid, but not quite there. And when it gets almost there, like very, very close, humans tend to have a more negative emotional response. Okay, so I think this actually relates back to early hominid species, where there was more than one humanoid species on the planet. We probably might not ever know for sure how many humanoid species existed, but we know that there was at least 14 of them. Well, theorized, because sometimes they find incomplete skeletons that just don't tend to match any of the other groups that they've already established. So what I'm trying to say though is this idea that us seeing something that is almost human but not quite there being so unnerving to us might relate back to a time when there were so many human species that we had genuine competition on the planet. Competition for the exact same resources, same shelters, same foods, because although they aren't around anymore, a lot of these communities had culture, music, art, all that stuff. Tools and whatnot. You have to remember that what set us out ahead is the fact that we developed complex language and therefore could communicate very complex things to each other. So I imagine that the idea of walking up to something that is not quite human, but almost there, and then trying to speak to him, and he just responds with, I imagine that that would be, that eventually led to like an emotional response to know, like, okay, I need to get out of here because I might be in some sort of danger. I'm saying, like, in a competition for resources, of course they would attack each other. There was probably like fighting and wars and stuff. But yeah, that was my theory. Tell me what you think.
So I see where that was going. So our brains developed this uncanny valley during our evolution. So as we evolved, we look back to what our previous evolution was and see something that looks not like us and is unable to communicate like us. Therefore, it creates this thing in the brain like, hey, run away from that. That's not safe, as we got smarter and smarter. The only problem I find with that is I think evolution is a lot slower than that. So the progression would be to a minimal at the point where when we were at the point where we have developed complex language and communication, that other previous form of our evolution is no longer around because of the slow progression of the evolution. So that's the only fault I find there, but I understand where that was going. Speaking of uncanny valley, did you check out that face? Not quite normal, right? Kind of makes you look at it and go, no, no. She was definitely on something. That was not normal behavior. I hope she did manage to get home, find some help or something.
Well, this was a discovery back in 2004. Some astronomers down at Kitt Peak National Observatory down in Arizona were observing the skies and found this asteroid. In 2029, there was a reasonable chance that it was actually going to collide with the Earth.
I fear, like in the movie Greenland, government scientists are going to continue to downplay the prospect of Apophis striking Earth until it's obvious that it is in fact going to crash into this planet. And by then, they will have plans in place to secret away government authorities and other elites into underground or in-mountain bunkers for survival, unless they come up with a mitigation effort that deflects the space rock.
What Harry Lear did was he provided a corrected trajectory for Apophis, showing that 7 years from now, Friday the 13th, April 2029, it's going to come crashing into planet Earth. And you're right, other astronomers have said if it does, it is a planet killer. You can sit on Earth and look up into space and see our satellites. It's going to be lower than those satellites. He says it will be the largest, closest thing we have ever observed to come by Earth. The orbit we now have for it is uncertain.
So in 2029 is when we're going to have our reset, just like in the video a little bit ago. And they're going to have the elites and stars and all these other individuals who are capable of multiple regenerations in their bunker. He said it himself. Right. Oh, that movie, Greenland. Excellent movie. Excellent movie. I highly recommend it. Moving along.
So is the Yellowstone supervolcano going to erupt and kill us all? The Yellowstone caldera has been a source of apocalyptic fascination for a long time. For those of you who don't know, Yellowstone is sitting on top of a massive magma chamber. This heat coming from the earth is responsible for many of the geothermal features you see here. Throughout Yellowstone's long history, this volcano has exploded several times, with some being categorized as super eruptions that had catastrophic effects not just in the surrounding environment but the entire globe. With the Earth very much alive here, the big question is whether it will explode again in our lifetimes. The answer is that it's very unlikely. Scientists are not convinced it will erupt anytime soon. In fact, it might not ever erupt at that scale ever again. We know the last super eruption took place over 600,000 years ago, the one prior 1.3 million years ago. But it's virtually impossible to predict just based on this timeline when another will occur. What has happened a lot more throughout history are not super eruptions, but much smaller lava flows. More than 80 have occurred since its latest big blast. There's no indication yet that a large-scale pressure buildup is going to set off anytime soon. So the good news is that we have such advanced technology now that we could be able to predict a major blast weeks, maybe even months before a major eruption takes place. So hopefully this will give you some peace of mind. The chances of you facing an eruption are extremely low, but the odds are never zero. If you want to discover more natural places with me all around the world, follow me for more adventures.
I had a different video in place before this one that was about the same thing, but as I was watching it, I realized there's some music in the background that I believe would be copyright, so unfortunately I couldn't play that one. This one was very informative. It wasn't as doom and gloom as the other one was. It was more fact. And don't worry, everything's going to be okay. But there are a lot of other videos out there that point the other way. That if that caldera were to erupt, it would be catastrophic for all of the United States. But don't worry, everything's going to be okay. That's the end of it for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate your time, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Here's my cutting room floor. 3, 2, 1. We developed as a people. I just got right out of camera, didn't I? Okay. Our brains. So inside of our brain. So our brains thing in the brain mountains, like they did the weird walk. Ooh, don't look at that. Like Bigfoot, how they always traipsing by and then they go, right? And then keep going. We've cloning, you think cloned of cloning. Now we're like making fake meat, which is just disgusting as a carnivore. That's very off-putting. That lady's face, that did not look normal. What's going on? But she definitely had a little bit too much going on. Let's say going on a couple more times. To a copyright is a copyright on copyright. And then it'll erupt. And everyone's going to get pneumona ultramicroscopic silicone volcaniconiosis. Yep. Nerd power. All right, try that again.